We are returning back to the book of Proverbs, and so it's been a bit of a gap since we were in the book, and this is what I'd like to do. I would like for us to take just a few moments and look at the author himself, to look at Solomon. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 3. 1 Kings chapter 3, Solomon becomes king. Solomon had been chosen as king well before David died. That was an established fact. Regardless of anyone else who might want to be king, David had already given that to Solomon. And that was by the will of God that was done. Solomon is nowhere close to being the firstborn of David. Not even close. He's not the firstborn between David and Bathsheba. But Solomon is the one chosen because for the same reason that David was chosen out of all the sons of Jesse. David was not the firstborn of Jesse. He was the youngest of the 8. And he's the one that's chosen. And now Solomon is the one that's chosen. And so let's look at 1 Kings chapter 3, and we begin in verse 4. Now the king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place. Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. Now he's just beginning his reign. Just. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask, what shall I give you?" And Solomon said, "You have shown great mercy to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in truth, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart with you. You have continued this great kindness for him, and you have given him a son to sit on his throne as it is this day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king instead of my father David, for I am a little child, I do not know how to go out or come in, and your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to be numbered or counted. Therefore, give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours?" The speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. Then God said to him, "Because you have asked this thing and have not asked long life for yourself, nor have asked riches for yourself, nor have asked the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern justice, behold, I have done according to your words. See, I have given you a wise and understanding heart, so that there has not been anyone like you before you, nor shall any like you arise after you." There will be no more king like Solomon ever. Now, Solomon's not going to be the same quality as David. Solomon is going to go down a path that David never went down. And Solomon is going to do things. He's going to start off doing something he shouldn't be doing. His first wife, what was his first wife? Daughter of Pharaoh. Yeah, Solomon's first wife. Who I'm talking about? Solomon's first wife, daughter of Pharaoh. And she had a very, very special position there with all the others that he had. Wives and then concubines. She got the special house. She got all the treatment of seniority, I suppose, is how this works. But he asks for wisdom. Of all the things he could have asked for, he asked to be able to judge righteously the kingdom of Israel. Okay? Out of all the things. And if you just take for a second, if the same thing were offered you by God, what would your answer be? I mean, you don't have to answer. But I first off, I'd be taken aback of, I haven't the foggiest idea. I don't know what I would ask for. But Solomon, I mean, who am I to receive such a thing as that? But Solomon asks that he can judge the people wisely and with justice. And God is going to give that to him in abundance. Now let's go to chapter 4. So we're still in 1 Kings. We go to chapter 4. We begin in verse 30. This is a description of Solomon. Thus Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the men of the east and all the wisdom of Egypt. So here we're given the idea that there are very wise men living in the day. Those of the east. Where would that be? Well, it's not specific. Could that be Persia? Sure. Babylon? Sure. Could it be India? Sure. China? Sure. It's all to the east. Anything that direction. And all the wisdom of Egypt. And yet, Egypt would have been a rather advanced civilization at the time. And they would have had a tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom. And Solomon exceeds them all. Now we get names. Verse 31. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite. They would have known him. We don't, other than just right here. And Heman, Chalcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahal, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. Now look at this, verse 32. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. Solomon, there's no other way to describe this except Solomon, in my mind anyway, Solomon's a Renaissance man. And we'll see more. Now, the book of Proverbs does not have 3,000 proverbs in it. So there's more that he had. And of course, if we don't have them, we don't need them. But he spoke them. And evidently somebody recorded it. And he composed 1,005 songs. Now it says songs, it does not say psalms. There's a difference. He has 2 psalms in the book of Psalms. But 1,003 other things that may not be considered psalms at all, but are some sort of song that he composed, he put together. Now notice with this, verse 33, and he spoke of trees, from the cedar tree of Lebanon, even to the hyssop that springs out of the wall. He spoke also of animals, of birds, of creeping things, and of fish. All men and all nations, from all the kings of the earth, who had heard of his wisdom, came to hear the wisdom of Solomon. He was the most impressive person in his day, bar none. When we get to the birth of Christ, we have men that come from the east. There is a term, and it's a very ancient term, called magi. All right, that is the term. They are given special status in that day of very, very wise men above everybody else. Very wise men. Now, Solomon would be greater still than any of them. Solomon would be. Now, let's just go to chapter 10 for a moment. And this is where the Queen of Sheba comes to visit Solomon. And of course, it's royalty meeting royalty from one nation to another nation. And there's going to be, obviously, the welcome. It's going to be an impressive welcome mat. We can just put it that. Or the red carpet, and more so, being put out for her. And she's bringing extraordinary gifts in this enormous caravan that she's got. But she's also going back with more than she brought. Because Solomon, well, you just can't outdo him. Now, when the Queen of Sheba, we go with verse 1, when the Queen of Sheba heard the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, that's the name of Jehovah, she came to test him with hard questions. Okay, what were those questions? Well, we don't know. They were something on her heart. Were they philosophical questions? I don't know. Theological questions? Once again, I don't know. But whatever they were, he could answer them. And well, let's just continue on. Verse 2, she came to Jerusalem with the very great retinue, with camels that bore spices, very much gold and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she spoke with him about all that was in her heart. Notice verse 3, so Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing so difficult for the king that he could not explain it to her. He was an extraordinary teacher. Because have you ever met somebody that you ask them a question, they answer the question, and you have no idea what they said? Did they answer the question? They probably did, but it's somewhere up there. I don't know what you just told me. But Solomon could explain it, whatever it was. And some people have the ability to take something complex and make it simple and explain it in a simple way. Others, they can take something complex, understand it, but they can't explain it very well to the rest of us. But Solomon could. Solomon could do that. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his servants, the service of his waiters in their apparel, his cupbearers, and his entryway by which he went up to the house of the Lord, there was no more spirit in her. She had been completely overwhelmed by all of it, every bit of it. Then she said to the king, it was a true report which I heard in my own land about your words and your wisdom. However, I did not believe the words until I came and saw with my own eyes, and indeed the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the fame of which I heard. So she's overwhelmed by this king and his kingdom. But we want to focus more on him and what he did. Now, let's turn to Psalm 72. This is written by Solomon. It's attributed to him. Now, could there be other psalms in the book of Psalms that are written by Solomon? Yeah. Just not attributed. It's very possible. But this one is, because we have plenty of psalms that aren't attributed to anybody. Some to David. Some, like Psalm 2. Psalm 2, if you read Psalm 2, it's not attributed to David. But if we go to Acts chapter 4, we see where Peter and the other apostles attribute it to David. So that's by inspiration. They are telling us who wrote Psalm 2. But this is a peculiar psalm in that is the way it ends. And this sounds like, it appears to be Solomon's recording of David's words, or created as though it were his words. Okay, and there's a reason I say that. Because we have, this is very much like one reign is ending, that's David, and the next one is beginning, that's Solomon. And here are words, give the king your justice, O God. All right, that's precisely what Solomon asked for in 1 Kings 3, to know how to deal in justice. And your righteousness to the royal son. May he judge your people with righteousness and your poor with justice. Once again, exactly what he asked for in 1 Kings chapter 3. Let the mountains bear prosperity for your people, for the people, and the hills in righteousness. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people, give deliverance to the children of the needy, and crush the oppressor. May they fear you while the sun endures, and as long as the moon throughout all generations. May he be like rain that falls on the mown grass, like showers that water the earth. In his days may the righteous flourish, and peace abound till the moon be no more. Now, this all sounds like a prayer concerning the lifespan of the next king, the next reign which has just begun. Or there is the very likelihood we're looking at years and years and years of a reign that's just now beginning. Verse 8, may he have dominion from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. May desert tribes bow down before him and his enemies lick the dust. May the kings of Tarshish and of the coastlands render him tribute. All right, so here countries are named by name. Tarshish is the ancient name of Spain. Okay. May the kings of Sheba and Seba bring gifts. Well, we know that, Queen of Sheba, anyway, did. May all kings fall down before him, all nations serve him. For he delivers the needy when he calls, the poor and him who has no helper. He has pity on the weak and the needy, and saves the lives of the needy. From oppression and violence he redeems their life, and precious is their blood in his sight. Long may he live. May gold of Sheba be given to him. And it was. May prayer be made for him continually, and blessings invoked for him all the day. May there be abundance of grain in the land. On the tops of the mountains may it wave. May its fruit be like Lebanon, and may people blossom in the cities like the grass of the field. May his name endure forever, his fame continue as long as the sun. May people be blessed in him. All nations call him blessed. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who alone does wondrous things. Blessed be his glorious name forever. May the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. Then comes the next line. The prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended. And that's what leads me to think that all this was Solomon writing it down, but either creating it as though they were a prayer of David, or that indeed it was a prayer of David, and that he's writing it down and saying the prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are ended. That his life is no more. He is gone. Now that's not to say that here we are in Psalm 72, that there are no more Psalms of David past Psalm 72. There are plenty of them afterwards. But this has to do with the timeline with their lives, and that David would have passed away by this point. Now, let's go to the book of Proverbs. So we want to go to Proverbs chapter 9. This is where we left off. And now that we have just a little bit more from concerning Solomon, his extraordinary wisdom and knowledge, and just as being someone recognized in the ancient world in his day, that he has no one parallel to him. He has no one that has attained to this. Nobody. Now we go to Proverbs 3 and verse 9. This is where we continue on from our last lesson. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then, here's the results, then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. Okay, now, God told that to Israel how many times? I really couldn't tell you. Just from the writings of Moses, beginning in Exodus, going through Deuteronomy, how many times had he, probably in Genesis as well, with the promises given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that this would be a true thing. Honor him with your wealth. First fruits of your produce, they go to him, and he's going to bless you. Now, let's take care, because there's what is known as the health and wealth gospel. And it's always that preacher. I've seen them. I have seen them. All right. I'm wearing a Rolex. I'm not really. I'm wearing a Rolex. There's a reason I'm wearing a Rolex. It's because I'm righteous. Okay. For your information, it's not a Rolex. For your information, this was probably less than $20. All right. But that's the whole idea. My shoes are, just think of some fancy Italian shoemaker. I've got a Porsche. I've got all these things. I got a Learjet. I have all these things, and it's because I give to the Lord. You give to the Lord, i.e., you give to me. You give to the Lord, and you will have all these things. All right, we have to take care with that, because that's the health and wealth gospel. That is not the gospel of Christ. Nor is that what God is telling them, ever. He will, you make the sacrifice, He'll make sure you never go empty-handed. He'll make sure of it. And as was stated in the days of Moses, stated with Christ, there will always be poor people. Always. You have stipulations given in the law of Moses that someone like Ruth and Naomi take advantage of. Well, it's rightfully theirs to go glean in the corners. That's to be left for the poor. Someone like Boaz, who has land, he gets to glean his fields, but there are certain parts of the field, the corners, you leave those alone, because that goes to the poor. They can go and reap out of that. And Ruth is able to take advantage of that. And then, of course, with Boaz taking care of her and Naomi, is more than that. What we want to bring out in this is that God will take care of us. He will never call us to do something, to make any kind of sacrifice, that somehow He won't reward us for it. Even if it's your life, you'll be rewarded. He will take care of you. He's going to do it. And it's a matter of having faith in Him. But understand that the whole idea of giving to God as an investment. I give God $100, He's going to give me $1,000. I give Him $1,000, He's going to give me $100,000. All right, that's not what this is about, in the least. But I've seen it, and I'm sure you've seen it too. Now we come to verse 11, and this is cited in Hebrews chapter 12. But let's read it. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, or be weary of His reproof, for the Lord reproves the Lord reproves him who He loves, as a father the son in whom He delights. Okay, so don't despise the Lord's discipline, because you're going to do wrong and you're going to have to be disciplined. You're going to have to be. And as the Hebrews writer there in Hebrews 12 and verse 5, he states, and you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to you as sons, which is what the book of Proverbs is doing. And it says, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline. Now, as we have stated, this appears to be like Solomon, the book of Proverbs, like Solomon guiding his son. Because it starts off that way. The book of Proverbs starts off in that way. All right, verse 8, chapter 1, verse 8. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. Okay? But is the book of Proverbs just for the children of Solomon? No. Not in the least. And the Hebrews writer is showing it's not just limited to some future king or a prince in waiting. It's not just for a child of Solomon at all. That my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline. That's for all of us, of where we are being spoken to as we are children, and the Father is speaking to all of us. All right? And there's going to have to be discipline. All right? Let's just ask the question. When you were a child, and we're talking about the whole point in growing up in your parents' house, was there ever a time when you did something they did not like and you were punished for doing? At least rebuked for it. Well, of course. Yeah, it's just going to happen. That happens. And you learn. You learn from it. Now, with God, this is going to go beyond just your childhood. It's now going to go into your entire existence here on the earth. That when we fail, when we do wrong, why wouldn't He discipline us? Why wouldn't He rebuke us? Well, He does. And that we should delight in that, take hold of that, and grow. All right? And grow. And Emma, you were a teacher, and I see it every now and then, of trying to teach someone how to do a certain thing, and they are determined, I'm going to do it my own way. Well, this is the way you should do it, but okay, do it however you think best. Do it however you think, but this is the way it's supposed to be done. And when it all comes out, it turns up as a big mess. Okay, now, understand, I was trying to show you how this should be done. You didn't want any of it. Now you see where your idea went, having no experience, having never done this ever before. You couldn't know how it was supposed to be done. Now, let's try it again. This is the way it's supposed to be done. When you do it this way, it turns out the way it ought to turn out. Okay? Now, with moral living, that's precisely what God is giving us. Moral living. Okay, let's go to verse 13. Here is a beatitude. Blessed is the one who finds wisdom and the one who gets understanding. For the gain from her, that's from wisdom, is better than gain from silver. Now, Proverbs has already described it that way. And her profit better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Which means, whatever you desire, whatever is the height of your desire, it pales in comparison to wisdom. It's not near as great as wisdom is. If it is, I want all wealth on the earth, even that is because it says her profit is better than gold and more than precious jewels. That wealth is nothing when compared to wisdom. It's nothing. And I'm sure you've heard of stories of individuals who have inherited an incredible amount of money. A wealthy parent died, or whomever gave them an extraordinary amount of money, and their life just went into a downward spiral. All right? That they had as much money, more money than anybody else would ever have in their lifetime. They have it at their disposal, and yet they're not happy. Their life becomes a problem. And there's so many things that is just destroyed as a person because of it. Wisdom doesn't do that. Wealth can do that. Wisdom does not do that. Notice, this is something that wealth or anything you can desire cannot give. Verse 16, long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honor. So she's giving both. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. Notice this next one. She is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. Those who hold fast are called blessed. So here is this beatitude. Once again, it's pronouncement of blessing given. All right. Now, in verse 18, I want us to look for a second that it's using the tree of life. The tree of life. Now, it's being used metaphorically here, but understand, the words tree of life have not been used at all since Genesis 3. Not brought up metaphorically, not brought up literally, not brought up at all. It is mentioned 3 times in Genesis, and of course we leave it in Eden as Adam and Eve have to leave Eden. And we don't hear of the tree of life until we get to the book of Proverbs. And in the book of Proverbs, it's going to be used metaphorically each time. This is like a tree of life. Okay. Or that would be a simile. She is a tree of life. Yeah, that's a metaphor. But if 4 times in the book of Proverbs, then we're not going to hear those words ever again, see those words ever again, until we get to the book of Revelation. And those are the only 3 books we see those words. Trees, sure. Life, sure. But the tree of life, no. Now, let's go to verse 19. Here we see wisdom at creation. The Lord by wisdom founded the earth. By understanding He established the heavens. By His knowledge the deeps broke open, and the clouds dropped down the dew. This is from the creation of the world. God has wisdom. He has absolute wisdom there. Now let's go to chapter 8. We go to chapter 8, and this is wisdom, beginning in verse 22. Here is wisdom speaking. Again, wisdom is personified in the book of Proverbs as a her. This is a woman, wisdom. And she speaks in the marketplace. She calls out at the city gates, concourses, all of this. But before any of that, wisdom is now telling us what she has seen. That she was with God at creation. Now, of course, this is personified wisdom. And wisdom is not a person. Wisdom it's from God, is what it is. Wisdom is something that you possess or reject. And it is from God. But notice, verse 22, the Lord possessed me at the beginning of His work, the first of His acts of old. From the very first of His acts, He had wisdom. Wisdom was with Him. He is all-knowing, all-wise. And, of course, from eternity to eternity. And from eternity, not only did He exist from everlasting to everlasting, from eternity in the past, He existed, so too did his wisdom. They're never separate from each other, ever. Where there is God, and there always has been, where there is God, there is his wisdom. There, always with him. Now, verse 23, ages ago I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth. So before the beginning of the earth, wisdom was. When there was no depth, I was brought forth. When there was no springs abounding with water, before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills I was brought forth, before he had made the earth with its fields, or the first of the dust of the world, when he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the foundations of the deep, when he assigned the sea its limits, so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was beside him like a master workman. I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world and delighting in the children of man. And yes, once we get to mankind, then wisdom begins to call out in the marketplace. Begins to call out of listen to me. Follow my words. Always do that, and things will be so much better for you. Now let's go back to chapter 3, Proverbs chapter 3, and we go to verse 21. My son, do not lose sight of these. Keep sound wisdom and discretion, and they will be a life for your soul, and an end adornment for your neck. Then you will walk in your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. If you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. So here is the advantage of keeping wisdom. This is the result. The result is here. That if you do this, it's life for your soul, adornment for your neck, there's security, you won't stumble. All these things will be yours. Every bit of it will be yours. You take it, you will have these things. Now, verse 25, we have these do nots. Do not be afraid of sudden terror, or of the ruin of the wicked when it comes. For the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, go and come again tomorrow, I will give it, when you have it with you. So here we have very, very similar things that are stated in Leviticus 19, also Deuteronomy chapter 24. Very, very similar things. But this has to do with when something is due someone, then you need, if you have the power to give it, you give it. You don't make them wait just for the sake of waiting. Go and come again tomorrow, I will give it. Don't do that. When you have it with you. Now, here's the next one. Do not plan evil against your neighbor who dwells trustingly beside you. Let's talk about the ancient world and really the world as it is, as it always has been, actually. If someone lives out in the middle of the desert, well, or just the wilderness, we won't make it a desert necessarily, just out in the middle of the wilderness, okay, and you like was in typically out west, where you have someone who they have their own cabin, and it may be miles until you get to the next person. What typically did they have to have with them? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things, but yeah, protection. because you've got wolves, you got bears. Who knows who's going to show up in the middle of the night, and you're going to have to protect yourself. You're going to have to do it. Well, that's the same way as it was in the ancient world. You live out in the middle of nowhere. Who's going to hear you? Nobody. Thieves come in, a raiding party comes in, they decide they like your house better than you do. There's nothing you can do about it. You can try, but they're going to overpower you. They're going to take your house. They're going to take everything. All right. So what is the idea then? The idea is we've got to live in groups. That's why you have villages. That's why you have cities. We live in groups and we protect each other. That if you call out, I will hear. If I call out, you will hear. And that we can generally protect ourselves from whether it's from the wild or from wicked people. We can do that. All right. Now what he is saying is someone is living next to you and it's in the hope of safety that they're doing it, and you're the very danger they're trying to avoid. All right? He's saying that don't plan evil against your neighbor who dwells trustingly beside you, who's there as your neighbor, who's there. He's going to help you. You're to help him. Well, he is supposed to help you. You're supposed to help him. You don't have there just a victim that's ready and nearby, that you work together and understand that from this develops trust and a civilization is what happens. Now, if there is no trust, then things go very, very badly. If there's no trust, and the same thing is today. If your neighbors are just the worst sorts, that they might break into your house, you don't know when. That they may want to burn your house down. All right, you don't know when that might happen. They're just the worst sorts. Well, you can't abide next to them in safety. You got to move. That's the only thing you got. You just have to move when things get dangerous and you can't raise your family and you don't know if there's going to be a tragedy today or coming very soon. You've got to get out of there. And so here is this idea that you've got to take care of your neighbor and your neighbor has to take care of you. That's what you do. Verse 30. Do not contend with a man for no reason when he has done you no harm. Okay. Do not envy a man of violence, and do not choose any of his ways. Now, we've talked about, because the book of Proverbs spoke of it earlier, of those that would entice you into some sort of mob or some sort of organized crime, of where we're going together and we're going to steal. If we need to, we're going to kill. We're going to do these things, and we're going to share in all of the loot, all the prize. We're going to split together. And here it says, don't even envy a man like that. Don't envy him. Why would you envy him? Well, you think a mob boss doesn't have a lot of money? Got a nice car? People that listen to him, fear him. There's no need to envy such a man, because you shouldn't envy anybody for that matter. But he's gotten it in a way that it's going to come down crashing on him. Do not choose any of his ways. All right, we've run out of time, and next week we will continue on. And thank you, everybody.